Excellent. Okay, well, let's get started then. So welcome everyone. I'm Prue Millier, and today the purpose of this is to have a bit of a meet and greet of for our students, for our supervisors, so that when you come to choose your supervisors next week, there's a better idea. We are going to start. Karina, I'll ask you to start, only because I know that you've got a dash off. We'll see how we go from there. If you'd like to share your screen.
Thank you everyone for letting me have a first go. I know we're all really, really busy. Paul, it's really great to see you. I haven't seen you for quite a few years, so we've managed to sort of cross paths but not bump into each other.
Yeah, it's good to see you too.
Thank you. I have a couple of projects available for this semester starting, because 2 of my honours students finished in first semester. I have particular areas within psycho-oncology. So I have one project going with Bloomhill and Professor Cindy Davis from our School of Law. What's it called? Law and something else, I think. I can't remember.
Society.
Thank you very much. We have one project already up and running on bowel cancer, but there's certainly scope for something else. So if you're interested in the sort of psycho-oncology space within cancer, I'm interested in projects within that. Projects that I do within that space are generally quantitative projects, so you'd be relying on quantitative thematic analysis, stuff like that, and small sample group sizes, and may involve interviews and focus groups. The other, I have another 2 projects available that I am co-supervising with Patrick Nunn, who's our professor of climate change. He's also in another school. So particularly we have a project that looks at the influence of COVID-19 on attitudes towards future climate change, and how or why climate change attitudes are impacted by things like pandemics or natural catastrophes. So that's a really current, up-to-date project, and would be a really interesting thing to come along with. The other one is something that Patrick Nunn is particularly an expert in. So he does a lot of research looking at Pacific Islander cultures, but also non-Indigenous and Indigenous cultures within Australia. And so he would like to, or we sort of came up with this project looking at marrying non-Westerners and Indigenous worldviews to optimize coping with future environmental disasters. So a really, really interesting project that we could certainly meet up with and go over in more details if you're interested in that. So 2 areas, psycho-oncology, and the other one is climate change, either with COVID or Indigenous and non-Indigenous samples. That's me, Prue. I'll hang around for a little bit because I don't need to go before another 15 minutes.
Oh, excellent. No, that'll be good. Well, thank you very much for that. That's really interesting. I've made notes too, so that's good. Now, Abby, Sam and Melanie, have you got any questions for Karina?
Put them on the spot, Prue.
Oh, why not?
I'm really not that scary.
No, not at all. No. Chris, good to see you too. Oh, your speakers don't work. Sam, type a question. If you put the question in the chat, then...
yeah, I'll be around long enough to read it.
Karina can answer those.
Yeah.
Hi, Chris, good to see you as well.
Hello, I'm sorry I'm a little bit late.
No,
that's today.
Yes, we're all extremely popular at the moment, so that's very good. Okay, so, well, if you got the students want to think about questions, then we'll come back to those as we go along. Paul, how about you can? Would you like to tell us about yourself and the projects you're doing?
Yeah, sure. I'll just share my screen if that's okay. Let me just change my. Does that work for everybody? Yep, excellent. Yep, so hi everybody. So my name's Paul Salmon. So I'm a professor of human factors and the director of the Center for Human Factors and Socio-Technical Systems at USC. And so we're basically a research center of between 20 and 25 people doing a range of projects. And effectively, all of our projects are about applying human factors theory and methods to understand and optimize human behavior, health and well-being in various areas. If you're wondering what human factors is and you haven't really heard about that, it's kind of closely related to psychology, and it's a discipline really that is focused entirely on optimizing human health and well-being. And what we tend to do is apply theories and methods that try to understand human behavior and the factors influencing human behavior, and then we try and design some interventions to try and optimize human behavior. We have 5 theme areas in the center. So transport and infrastructure, we do a lot of road safety research looking at why drivers behave in the way that they do. Defense, security and resilience, we do a lot of work in areas such as military system design, disaster response and management. Sport and outdoor recreation, we look at injury causation and decision making in elite sports and things like that. Workplace safety, organizational safety is self-explanatory, and we also do a fair bit of work in land use planning and urban design, looking at how you design urban environments to optimize people's behavior. So there's a lot of stuff going on. I won't dwell on the different projects, but in terms of what we've got available for honours this intake, so we're a bit snowed under at the minute, so we're kind of really only looking for one. We could maybe be persuaded for 2 students. Talk to me about that. And we already have got one on board as well, so we're pretty busy. We have 4 kind of areas, one of which is a specific project which is in partnership with some organizations. So that's the first one. So this one is, so we do a lot of work looking at injury causation on outdoor education. So basically this is where children go on school camps and they engage in activities that have a learning goal associated with them. We've done a lot of work in that area, and we've got a partnership with the Outdoor Education Group, which is Australia's biggest provider of outdoor education. And they're really interested in running a project which is looking at the injury and safety fears of outdoor education practitioners and how this influences their decision making and behavior. So the idea here is that there's a risk to injury to the children, and often the incidents can be fatal, and there's a fear of that within the practitioners, with the instructors, the managers. And this project really is looking at what those fears are and how that influences their day-to-day behavior. So that's in partnership with the Outdoor Education Group and actually 2 international organizations, the Chadwick International School in South Korea and the US Student Conservation Association. So plenty of support and keen organizations around that project. The second project that we're interested in is related to an Australian Research Council discovery program. And this is looking at the risks associated with artificial general intelligence. So this is not artificial intelligence, which is here now. This is the next generation, which is known as artificial general intelligence, or you might have heard it called artificial superintelligence. And this is the artificial intelligence that is going to be more intellectually superior to humans. And actually, there are lots of risks associated with that. And, one of the worst ones, if you look at Nick Bostrom's work, is that they actually decide that humans are obsolete and they wipe out the human race. So we're interested there around, well, what are people's current understandings of the risks associated with AGI, and what are the perceptions of them? Do they think it's credible, or do they actually just think, well, yeah, that's so far ahead in the future, it's not going to happen to me? So interesting project there. The third one is more a broad area that we're looking at. So we're interested in the psychology of esports. So that's obviously a growing phenomena, and we have current projects now looking at esport decision making and teamwork, and we're interested in things like situation awareness of esports players. And then the final one is another Australian Research Council project. So we have a darknet laboratory here, which is that horrible layer of the internet where you can actually go online anonymously and you can buy, pretty much any nasty thing you want to buy: drugs, guns, illicit goods, etc. We've got a mock-up darknet marketplace environment, and we're interested in what factors are influencing people's decision-making when they're choosing to buy illicit drugs, specifically in this project, MDMA. So we're quite interested in that. So obviously some interesting psychology projects around that. And that's me. Thank you. Stop my share.
The thing, Paul, I always love having you come to these because you go, wow, that's so cool. The darknet. Oh, we could do that. You could do that.
It's good fun.
That's really good. Yeah, it's interesting how that darknet stuff is sort of slowly advancing and getting better. So now, of the students, do you have any questions to ask Paul? like things like, I suppose, Paul, one of the questions would be like, oh, I really like that, but how much do you have to know before you start?
Yeah, that's a great question. Typically, not a great deal. So we've obviously got a lot of experience in the different areas, and really what we find is, students can come in quite new to an area, and it's just about picking the right kind of analysis method or the right data collection approach, and it's pretty straightforward. I think the thing that we found really good within our honours projects previously is because you're effectively becoming part of a research centre that has the expertise in the different areas, so you've got lots of support around the place.
Yep. No, that's really good. I think it's comforting that you realise that you don't need to know everything to start with, and it can be a challenge when you go into a new area. But and I think that's the strength of, for example, a group like yours, is that there's people who can do a whole lot of different things. So there is that support for students as well. So
yeah, and I think a lot of these areas that we're working in, the real kind of novel and innovative work is about taking very standard and well-known psychology theories and actually applying them in these new areas. So it's more that you're across the psychology stuff, which you all will be, and then you're applying it in this new context.
yeah, no, that's really good. That's really good. Excellent. Well, your email address is psalmon@USC. So I will have that details if anybody wants to follow you up. But we'll also put these slides up next week for orientation too, so students will have that option again too. Excellent. Thank you very much for that. That's really good. Shan, good to meet you here as well. Did any of you, Melanie, Sam, Abby, or Shan, have any questions for Paul? Sam, I know your microphone doesn't work, but type a question if you've got one. Okay.
Sorry, I just have a general question. How is it organized? Like, will there be like a set time and a day where we meet on campus, or is this more communication over email and Zoom? Or I'm just trying to get an idea and organize that with work.
You will, with your supervisor, you'll need usually it's an hour a week, and you can do that in person or you can do it by Zoom. Now, you're based down at the Moreton Bay campus. For example, if you were interested in working with the supervisor at Sippy Downs, you might come up for the first visit, but then you can certainly do that by Zoom. It is at a time that suits you and your supervisor.
Okay.
So if you've got, I think the Moreton Bay classes are Monday. So yes. If you might arrange an hour in that day. Although I have to say, if you've got 6 hours of classes, you may be a bit pooped at the end too. Okay. So just take that into account when you're doing it.
Okay, thank you.
Something you could do. Now, Abby asked, because her speaker's on the blink as well, not a problem. Paul, I think actually, thank you, Abby, it's a great question. What's the data collection process for the dark web like? What does that involve?
Yeah, really great question. So we do have the real darknet laboratory here, where we can go into the real darknet and find all sorts of awful things. For the honours project, what we would use is we've got a simulator of the darknet, so actually a controlled darknet marketplace and set of forums where basically participants can go in and perform a drug purchasing task. It's extremely realistic. It's built based on the darknet, but it's not the real darknet, so we don't have those ethical concerns around that. So basically, we've got a simulator where you can come in, the participants can complete a drug purchasing task. We've got things like eye tracking devices where we can monitor where they're looking on the darknet marketplace and what information they're looking at, so we can collect that data. We also typically ask them to do what we call a concurrent think aloud protocol. So actually, as they're navigating through the darknet marketplaces, they're thinking aloud and telling us what they're doing and why why am I looking at this buyer? Why am I looking at this type of drug and so on and so forth. So we have basically a simulator that we can collect various types of data from during that process.
Mm. And I think with all of these, Paul, is that the data collection for each of those is reasonably well established too. So the student doesn't have to sort of go, gosh, I wonder how you do that.
No,
so
and yeah, that's exactly right. And that's the thing with the Darknet project is we've just ran a study looking at decision making around a purchase task in that simulator. So we have the kind of protocol very well set up and established.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That makes a difference. Excellent. Abby, does that answer your question? Good. Thank you very much. Okay. Thanks, Paul. Much appreciated. Now, Kate, did you have to run off? I was just thinking. I know, Lee. You had to. You've got some things over there at the tower, at the TA as well.
Lee can go first if he wants.
I'm okay. I had a cancellation, so you're good to go, Kate. I'll go after you.
No worries. I'll go now, Prue.
Yes, please. That would be great.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Honours and USC. I have a slightly different project. So normally I work in the body image field, but I've had an kind of opportunistic project come up that I would like someone to be involved in. And it's a collaboration with an organisation called A Brave Life. And it's an organisation that supports teenage mums, basically, to go back to university or to gain work, basically engage in healthy, adaptive behaviours. And so there's about 10 or 12 young women that are involved in the program so far. And so I've been chatting to the head of the organisation, and she would like some research on perhaps some of the outcomes that these young women might be achieving. And then also looking at some of the things like how to build confidence, self-worth, resilience, having a look at things like motivation and readiness to change. And so one of the things that she's quite interested in is why you get some young women that come into the program and engage in all of these adaptive behaviours, you know, basically turn their life around. And then there's other young women that come in and still kind of continue to, you know, engage in some less adaptive or less healthy behaviours, and how all of that is managed while dealing often as a single parent. The average age, I think she said, of the women was about 17, but going down as young as about 14. So it's a little bit out of my area. So the student would need to be a little bit more independent in terms of getting their head around the literature and whatnot, but not independent in terms of running the project themselves. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of support from myself and the person who runs the organisation. But we're really looking for the right type of person for this project. Obviously, these, well, not obviously, but some of the participants in the organisation are quite vulnerable. They're in domestic violence situations. They might be experiencing homelessness and drug use and so on. So, you know, we really need someone that's got a little bit of a more mature approach, someone that is, you know, not judgmental, and that can take a compassionate stance towards the participants of the study. It's likely to be a mix of qualitative and quantitative stuff, so it's likely that you'll have to go and do some interviews. The organisation is based in the Moreton Bay region, and it's likely that you would probably have to do some stuff face-to-face, you know, depending on obviously what's happening with COVID situation as well. So if you're interested, shoot me an email. I'm not wanting to put someone on the project without meeting with them first and chatting with them, so don't put it down as a project preference unless we've had a chat beforehand. But really happy to chat to anyone further, and good luck with your year.
Thanks for that, Kate. I think that I would also say that I promise I will help you too, as a bit of a developmental person as well. So I think that there's certainly that it's such an interesting project, and this is a really wonderful thing about having the new campus at Moreton Bay, is that this is a way to value add in that region and to help better outcomes in that way. So that's really good. Questions, anyone? No, Sam, Abby, Shan, any of you a question? Kate, your email is just, as you can see how you can spell Kate's name on the bottom of at KMULGREW at USC. That'd be very exciting. Thanks, Kate. That's really great. Oh, and Kate's put it in the chat as well, so check that out too. Excellent. Any quick questions on that? Shan or Melanie? Sam and Abby, if you wanted to post your type of questions as well. Okay. Not a problem. Okay, well, what we might do is, thanks, Kate, that's really great. Lee, oh, no, you were Johnny Come Lately. Jacob, I think you were next, if you would like to chat.
I can go next. Let me just share. There we go. All right, so hi everyone and welcome. So I just want to kind of run through briefly the kinds of things that I research. Today I don't have specific projects to kind of describe, but if you're interested in any of these areas, I encourage you to send me an email, get in touch, and we'll make a time to chat and discuss some ideas and some potential things that we can do a little bit further. So my area broadly is the area of psychology that we call health psychology. It's all about applying psychological principles to improve people's health, and in particular their physical health. So my two main research areas are reducing the impact of stress on health and looking at some of the mechanisms through which we can do that, which is really quite interesting, and also looking at things like brief interventions that we can use that are really efficient and that can have some kind of meaningful impact on reducing the impact of stress on people's health. Some of the areas that I've looked at and that I am continuing to research, so there's potentially opportunities to do work in this area, are things such as stress mindset and stress beliefs. So there's really a body of work that's emerging that's indicating that when we have the belief that stress can be both good and bad, we tend to have better outcomes under stress in terms of well-being, physical health, performance, and those kinds of things. So there's certainly something that we could do in that space. And I've got a few different ideas. I also am interested in looking at people's decisions around the kinds of coping behaviours that they enact and employ in a particular moment. And I kind of draw from other areas of health psychology and some of the things that we know about health behaviour and changing health behaviour to understand how we can promote healthier coping behaviours. So there's potentially some stuff that could be done there as well. I'm also interested in stress theory and measure development and those kinds of things, and also occupational stress. So I've done a few different things in different groups. And if I just mention this because sometimes, people are already kind of engaged or interested in particular occupations and areas, and I'd certainly be open to doing some research in those kinds of things as well. When it comes to understanding and changing health behaviour and risky behaviour, I've done this kind of thing across a whole range of different areas. For example, currently doing a study on sugar consumption with parents of young children. I've also done stuff in the area of exercise, sedentary behaviour, alcohol consumption, water safety, all of those kinds of things. And I tend to use what we call social cognition theories, dual process theories, and also integrated models. So I'm particularly interested in theoretical testing and advancing and integrating those kinds of things as well. In terms of the methods I tend to use in research, so I do like to use experimental methods where possible, which can include testing brief online interventions, and I'm certainly happy to do something in that space. Also, I tend to use prospective correlational designs where we kind of measure people on the same constructs twice over a certain period of time, and we can kind of predict things in the future, and also qualitative methods. So whether that be interviews or online surveys or something like that. And so if you are kind of particularly interested in any of those methods and getting skills and experience, we can potentially work with that as well. So the final thing to mention is that people that are interested in these areas, I encourage them to go to my research website, which is jacobkeach.com, and to look at the current research and the publications page, because that gives you a really in-depth look at all of the projects that I have ongoing and all of the projects that I've already published. There's links through to papers and all of those kinds of things as well. So if you are interested in discussing any of that stuff further, that's my email address up the top there. Just get in touch and we'll make a time to chat.
Thanks, Jacob.
Prue, I'm going to have to run now, so thank you. And it was
thanks,
nice
Karina.
feel free to send me an email and I'll see you guys later.
Excellent. Take care, Karina. All the best. That's great. Thank you very much for that. Now, I'm going to see if we've got any, yes, thank you. Paul has put his, thanks for putting your email, your address up there as well. And also the human factors, socio-technical systems, which I can now write without sort of going, what the hell am I doing again? Anyway, so that's very good. Okay, so in terms of, so Jacob, you're really, how many students are you looking for? 1 or 2?
I'm taking 1, I believe, but yes. That's so okay. Yeah, yeah. And I haven't already been in conversations with anyone, so the spot isn't yet taken.
No, that's all right. It's been such a short turnaround from first to second semester that that's not at all surprising. So that's good.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So that's very interesting, stress research. Now, Lee, we might swap over to you now.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Lee Canis. I'm in the clinical psychology team and the psychology team. My research background, I look at metacognitive processes related to anxiety and those type of things. But more recently, last couple of years, been looking more at user experience and environmental psychology. So in online gaming and also in tourism. So the project I have for this honours cohort is with Sunreef whale swimming off Mooloolaba coast. And we're looking at doing a qualitative study, interviewing people's experience of getting in and swimming with the whales. And this is really around emotional responses, particularly the emotion of awe, and how this has an influence on visitor experience and also on pro-environmental behaviours. The whale season has started. The whales are already arriving on the coast. So the person that's doing this project needs to hit the ground running because they're only here for a few months. You need to have quite good availability because sometimes because of weather and sea conditions, boats get cancelled and there's days where you might need to go out the drop of a hat. You need to be able to manage seasickness. You need to be able to swim, is important. Not that you'll be getting in the water, but you never know. And you need to be comfortable approaching people and interviewing people. So really wanting someone that has an interest in user experience and environmental psychology, not wanting someone that thinks, oh, whales, that sounds cool for me. This is not your project. You need to be kind of invested in being able to interview people, be comfortable doing that, and it will be a qualitative study. And that's me. Thank you very much.
No worries. So you want someone who is happy to go on a boat, happy talking with people, would like to work on their tan. I didn't say that. That's a very...
And people coming off the boat don't always want to be interviewed. They've been out in the water, they're swimming, they're cold. So, you need to be comfortable with a bit of rejection.
Okay. Now, you've been doing the whales for a while, haven't you?
Yeah, actually, Kate and I started about 6 or 7 years ago. So it's been a really ongoing project. We have a really good relationship with Sunreef. So, yeah. And it also involves Vicky Schaefer from tourism is the other person.
So do the people go on the boat go out on the boat, or just meet the boat when it gets
it's usually a bit of a mix, but most of the time you might be sitting around the dock waiting for the boat to come back.
Yeah. Okay, that's okay.
All right.
No worries. That sounds interesting. Do we have any? Does anybody have any questions for Lee?
I'm wondering if I can be one of Lee's honours students, please. I like whales.
Sure, that'd be fine. I'm not quite sure how you'd go on top of your existing degree, but that's beside the point. So, yeah, no, that's no worries at all. I think that it's a really interesting thing about understanding why people get excited about, that whole emotional process of war and what it does for people in the end too. So I think it's a really interesting project in that way.
Yeah, that's right. We're particularly interested in what what a boat's at during the experience, during the, when they're actually out in the water.
Yeah. And I think that's sort of that really deep emotion too, and what that does. So no, that's really interesting. Thank you very much, Lee. I hope we will find someone fabulous for it. I mean, they're all fabulous. You know that, don't you? Anyway, now I think Matt was next, and then I'll come to you, Chris. So, Matthew.
Really, I'm next. I'll be quick then, Chris. Hi all. I'm Matthew Summers. I'm based at Moreton Bay and Sippy Downs and the Thompson Institute. I'm playing multi-campus here for another semester. So somewhere I'll catch up with you if you want to meet up with me. My background is I'm a neuropsychologist by training, and most of my research is done in the neuropsych field, in particularly with aging and aging-related disorders. So at postgraduate level, I tend to supervise projects looking into clinical disorders such as dementia and looking at interventions or predictions for dementia. But at honours level, I don't tend to do clinical disease populations. You just don't have the scope in the time frame you've got to actually make that a viable project. So I tend to work mostly in healthy ageing populations at honours level. And again, we'll look at different cognitive functions and interactions with other processes. So things like physical exercise, social behaviour, loneliness, also looking at things like mood and stress reduction techniques such as mindfulness. I don't have fixed projects. In 25 years, I've never had a fixed project that I write and a student come and does. What I do is I tell you, these are my areas. And if you're interested in those areas, let's sit down and have a chat and create one from scratch. But you'll use my knowledge, contacts and expertise to get something off the ground quickly. So if you're interested in aging related research, anything to do with cognitive function, behaviour or psychology in terms of mental health, then I'm happy to sit down and talk to you and we can work through some ideas and get something off the ground. It's just, I'm old. You can tell by the grey hair. So my old school training was your supervisor worked with you one-on-one to develop a project from the start. So you got a good training in developing a research idea from scratch all the way through to delivery and writing it up. And we do it in a very quick time frame because that's honours. Good. That's
excellent. No, that's good. That's good. So, how's the men's sheds going?
Men's sheds are on pause. COVID has shut them down, and I'm still trying to get back and working with them again as they start to come online. But these recurrent shutdowns due to COVID and lockdowns and that age group makes it very tricky. I have very good contacts with aged care community providers. So the local providers on the Sunshine Coast who do in-home care support services. So we often work with them or their workforces in terms of service delivery. stick my email in the chat. So if you're interested, email me. I'll set up a meeting. We can have a chat either by Zoom or face to face, and then you can decide whether you want to go ahead with it.
Excellent. Yes, I know that having looked at your projects, they all come. It's like, I agree with Chris, you listen to it and go, oh, that'd be good. I could do that. Oh, I could do that. Or that one. Or that one. Anyway.
Or we can do something left field.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
always something interesting that's going on, which is just fantastic. Thanks for that, Matt. And as Matt said, he's mostly down at Moreton Bay, but also up here and at the TI. Chris, I shall ask you now if you would like to share your things.
I can indeed share. Alrighty, hopefully you can all see that. So my name is Chris, and like Matt, I also like to work in the space of older people's wellbeing. I'm especially interested in what's going on for older people who are really thriving in their lives and doing well. And so previously I've looked at things like competitive sport in older people, living well with dementia, and also a bit about positive psychology. And so what are people leveraging as their strengths in their older years? Some of the living well with dementia work that I've done has been on therapeutic horticulture, or the use of gardening as a way of enriching people's lives and the benefits that can provide for them. And also looking at social mobility and driving cessation in a dementia context, and so how people navigate that space of no longer driving and how that works out for them. I'm also a bit interested in andragogy, or the study of how adults learn, and also interprofessional education, and so looking in particular at things like psychological safety and how students develop a professional identity. So that's some of the work that I am currently doing. I don't have any structured projects this time around, and so happy to work with you to develop any ideas you might have about putting your own stamp on things. I do a mix of qualitative and quantitative research, and so we can find something that suits you. And I think listening to all the ideas today, you're all very spoilt for choice. I think there's some great projects out there. So if you're interested in finding out more about mine, please feel free to zip me an email there. I think that's it from me.
Thanks, Chris. That's great. That's great. We're getting through this. Questions? Melanie, Sam, Abby, or Shanshan? Rebecca? That's good. Okay. I'll put the chat back up again. Excellent. Okay. So we are zipping through this probably a little bit quicker than I thought, but that's okay. What I'm going to do is, we have another of our lectures, Wagis Peter, one of our new supervisors. And his area of expertise is that he's a cognitive psychologist who's joined us from the University of Western Sydney, and he did his PhD at Macquarie in brain imaging and cognition and things like that. And as you can see from the slide that I'm sharing, he is very interested in, at the moment, and has some projects going on, auditory cognition, to think about how people are hearing in noisy environments. So a little bit of expressions about, explanation, I should say, about auditory cognition. What are those, then the normal processes as well as the disorders of that, brain imaging, things like that. Thinking about people having difficulty listening when there's speech, when there's background noise present. So these are some of the projects that he is looking at. So noise sensitivity, personality, personality in terms of noise tolerance, and 2 online studies particularly about personality traits and subjective and objective noise tolerance will be explored. So some interesting sort of studies about how people deal with noise, and are some people more sensitive than others. So that's an interesting thing. Now his address is down here, and that's pronounced Wagisi. So not Varghese as I used to say, but Wagisi. So, and he's a delightful person. He's based up here at Sippy Downs. but he also, he lives down towards North Lake, so at the moment. So you may be able to meet him at Moreton Bay. And I think that's it. If you've got any questions about those projects, I suggest you contact him directly. So there we go.
Prue, can I just add
Sure.
something to that? Only just because I was working with Vagis on some of the stuff around personality, and it's a really interesting project, and he teaches the Theories of Personality course. We both teach into that course. And so we were looking at doing an assignment within that course around how some of those big 5 personality traits influence people's ability to filter out noise. And there's some really, really interesting stuff around there. And he's a great person to work with. So I'd just add that little plug in for him.
Oh, fantastic. He is delightful. So Kate, which personalities are more likely to filter out or be sensitive to noise?
Well, stay tuned. That's what we got to find out.
Oh, come on. We need a teaser, Kate. We need a little bit more.
I don't know.
You know, Hope. See, that's why you have to do a project so you can find out about it. I will expect you to, we'll want a report as we go along. So there we go. Now, I realise it's only 1:45, and I know this is not very long. Now, what's going to happen next week in the 2 face-to-face orientation sessions is that the supervisors, if they are able, will join us. Otherwise, I'll be sharing what they've been talking about in terms of the projects that they have available. During that, whether you come to the session at Sippy Downs or you're down at Moreton Bay, each of the students fill out a supervisor preference form with 4 options. They're 4 the 4 they think are the best that they're happy to do. The idea is that the reason we do that is that sometimes we'll have, everyone will want to do Kate's projects and she can't take that many. Or Paul will be swamped with people. So we have to sort of have a way that we can allocate you to an area that you are interested in. And by the end of next week, we will let you know who you've been allocated to as your honours supervisor. So the purpose of today was to give you a chance to hear what people are up to, which is, as Chris said, one of these really great projects. And then there will be a little bit of repetition of this on Tuesday and Thursday, but a lot of it is about, how the honours year goes and those sorts of things. So I would recommend, what I will do is that once I have this as a recording, I'll post it to the 408A webpage. But also to put the email addresses of the people who've spoken today so that you've got a chance to see those and that you can follow those up, because it's fine to contact several supervisors. Say, oh, I like what Paul's doing. Jacob sounds really good, and Lee sounds very cool as well, and Matt, yeah, that sounds good too. So to contact those people, to have a conversation with them and see whether how much you sort of think that sounds like it suits you. Now, did you have any more questions before? Because we might wrap this up by 1 o'clock anyway. Any questions?
Yeah, me.
Melanie, not a problem. How can we help?
There is an online session next week on Wednesday. Is that the same as the information session on Thursday?
I didn't know there was one on Wednesday. I will have to find that out.
That's an online one.
Yes. I thought they were all in person, so let me have a look.
Yeah.
Orientation. There we go. By Wednesday. Okay. Wednesday. Do you know, I'm sorry, do you know what time it was?
1 p.m. to 1:50.
I can't see that. Do you want to send that to me, Melanie?
Yeah, okay.
I'm planning to be there on Thursday morning anyway. I'm not sure about that one. My understanding was that it was to be in person.
Okay.
So,
no problem.
now the lovely thing about Moreton Bay, it is right next to the train station, like right next to the train station, which means that you can, from where it's very easy to get to, parking's no problem there. So, I didn't think they had anything in the afternoon. Anyway, we'll have to find out about that. But certainly my intention is to be there on Thursday. Any other questions, students? Sam, Abby, Rebecca, Shensheng, any questions? Especially developmental disorders, any opportunities? Help me out, guy. Possibly not directly, but if you were looking at those developmental disorders in terms of the way that it is expressed in a social sense, Kay Posibon does a lot of research with social psychology. So you may be able to look at the development of theory of mind. The only thing I would say to be wary of in honours is that working with children can be very time consuming. The ethical process can be very time consuming, which means, yes, John Mason is probably a good person as well, so that you would be probably talking to the parents of children with developmental disorders, although that is also an interesting area. Associate Professor John Mason, who's the head of the discipline of psychology at the moment, has done a lot of work with intellectual disabilities and some very, very interesting work with chromosome 18 disorders. So, but John at the moment, I don't know whether John has any space, so that could be the problem with that one. But if you are, I suppose in terms of developmental disorders, so we're under 18 or the developmental disorders that the consequences in later life. For example, you might be interested to talk to Matt Summers, who in talking with healthy aging, what are the issues perhaps of people with a developmental disorder as they get into later adulthood? You may be able to talk to him about that as well. So sometimes I would also, as a general comment, is that sometimes you may think that this is what you want to do, and that there may not be a supervisor who's doing something or is in a position to take you on that particular project, but you might find that you have something that's really interesting that comes sort of a bit out of left field, that in fact is a part of understanding that area you're interested in, but it's another way of looking at it. I was going to do healthy aging as an honours project and it didn't happen. So I did something on work-life balance and did a PhD on it. So sometimes you start in one place and then you go, oh, that looks interesting, I'm going over there. So that to be a little bit flexible in that way might be interesting as well. If you're interested, for example, in developmental disorders, some of the work that Paul is doing, for example, on injury and safety fears of school camps, for example, perhaps one of the fears they have is they don't know enough about developmental disorders, and therefore developmental disorders becomes this big problem for them because they don't know what they're doing. Now, that's not about the child with the developmental disorder, but it is about their world, because their parents would like them to go on school camps, but the people who provide those camps might be very concerned, they don't know how to deal with them. So it might be, there may be a way, for example, to put your interest in something that may look at being quite different. So developmental disorders in adulthood, it depends. Well, we have, that's a good point. It might be Chris's work with healthy aging. Do people with developmental disorders, do they still have healthy aging? It might be Jacob's work looking at health psychology. What happens to stress with those people? You know, how are they experiencing? Does stress look different for them? Sorry, I'm definitely thinking on my toes here, but just to see how it goes. So it might even, you can see how that you could take your interest and apply it in those different contexts. So sometimes when you're thinking about a project that you want to do, that it's this idea, but it could be viewed in many different areas as well. Does that help at all? And Chris, if you've got something to say with that, I think or Jacob or anyone else who'd like to add to that, that would be fine.
I was trying to think how that might fit in with andragogy and such, but I mean, I really know very, very little about developmental disorders, so I'm probably not a good.
You might be someone who's as well.
Well, look, there's no time like the present for learning new things, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So there you go. Anyway, so but you may the start of the project may look a bit sort of different than you thought it was, but it's working through the project to embrace the opportunity to learn a lot more than perhaps you thought you were ever going to. It's been true. So there you go. Any other questions? Sam, any questions for anyone? Type away. No questions? Great projects. Excellent. Okie dokie. Right. Well, if we have no more questions at the moment, Abby, did you have any last questions? No, you're fine. No worries. Well, look, thank you very much, Paul. Thank you very much for joining us today. Much appreciated. Matt and Jacob and Chris and Kate, Lee, and one more question. Yes, quick. So that's good. I think Shan Chan's typing madly at the moment. What was coming to me? Anywhere to find a list of projects. We sort of have a list. When I put the email addresses up on Blackboard, I will also, well, I'll put a brief synopsis of what people are doing onto that. So that will help as well. Excellent. I think that if you've got any more questions, please feel free to email me. But lovely to see you. Thank you very much for coming today. Thank you everyone for coming today. And we'll look forward to seeing you for orientation next week.